I think we're live.
I think we are. Yeah.
Well, here we are. I'm honored to have a friend like you that I can discuss story and scripting and the business with. It's always a pleasure to have you, ScriptDoctor, here with me. This is the first time I've tried a stream with a guest, so you are the guinea pig.
I am honored to be the experiment. I love that.
That's wonderful. Well, as you see in the description there, I wanted to, as part of our evolution of, as we've been writing together, we were talking about, genres that we love and things. And I want to find out your thoughts initially. The movie Double Indemnity ended up being one that you and I both love. And
Yes.
It's part of a genre called film noir. What's your thought on film noir? My hypothesis is it's one of the few sort of uniquely post-war American genres that can talk truthfully about people. But I'd love to know what your take is on film noir and how you think Double Indemnity fits in it.
My take on film noir has been it's kind of like a romantic tragedy. Because I don't often, when I think of film noir, it's very rare that I can think of a film noir movie that ends on a positive note.
By its nature, yeah.
Yeah, because by its and there's so many interesting things that I admire about it. I especially like the fact that the protagonist is usually someone of dicey reputation, and it's only when they actually kind of do something honest. It's when they actually suffer.
Yes, and did you notice too that the evil characters often tell the truth a lot more than the good people do? That the narrator tends to be unreliable, don't they?
Yeah, because it's Walter Neff, at least in this one.
Yeah.
And he's doing his confession, and it's like we're not 100% sure if he is telling the exact truth or not, because
yes,
because he's covering a very long time frame, like several months.
Yeah.
And anyone who's at least who doesn't have an eidetic memory, and that's a lot of people, tend to get some things misplaced here. But the other part of film noir that I really enjoyed is the fact that it takes the concept of a victim and weaponizes it against those that have insecurities that want to fill a role that they're not comfortable filling. And in this case, it's usually like the heroic rescuer, the savior, the shining knight type of thing.
I love that. Yeah, exactly. And it paints a picture of humanity as corrupt and evil, that there's a certain self-serving, greedy, like, the old saying, you can't cheat an honest man. Well, Walter Neff, who is brilliantly played by Fred MacMurray, I thought, really against type, don't you?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, he uses that sort of everyman approach. That was why I cast myself in Trouble Is My Business, is that I'm kind of just a everyman schlub who is driven, has a desire for money and sex and power, and Walter Huff, the character that Fred MacMurray plays, he's a insurance salesman, but he's driven by those same desires. You're absolutely right. And his confession is self-serving, but it's also that has that kind of drenched in inevitability, which I love in film noir, don't you?
Oh God, yes. I mean, it like, the first film noir-ish type that I saw before would be Sunset Boulevard, and this kind of has the same thing. It's like, we're introduced our main character in the last moments of their life, and they're recounting the story of how they got here. And what's so fascinating about it is that the way that they set up the narrative of the story, you kind of forget that this is them dying.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to welcome Brett Cohen with a $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. You are the first. I wish I had a drum roll. Thank you for joining the discussion. Yeah, Script, you bring up a great point overall. I think film noir also had, you have to be as luxurious a country as America to really go that dark and be able to really examine the sort of underbelly of human nature. And I think film noir does it really well and very honestly sometimes. And women in it are very powerful. Like I think some of the best parts are women in film noir because they not only use their feminine power, but often they are very much symbolic of a sort of rejiggering, if you will, of the sexual politics that happened after World War II. That there was a certain concern. Women were in the workplace. Women were being asserting themselves. Yeah, asking for more, and often the duplicitous nature of females in film noir. There's usually the good girl and the bad girl, and I think that worked a lot of masculine fears about what were women going to be. Could femininity corrupted and turned into this sort of evil manipulative character, like obviously like our character in Double Indemnity. She uses her sexual wiles. You remember the opening? Barbara Stanwyck played I think her name is Phyllis, right? Phyllis.
Yes,
Dietrichson?
Phyllis.
Yeah,
Dietrichson. Yeah.
And we're introduced to her by that descending the stairs, and it's from his point of view, and you see the ankle bracelet, and of course the ankle, the bared leg being very much symbolic of a open sexuality. Well, she really is in the driver's seat in that, and he is very much being manipulated. But what the film is saying is that even a man who posits himself as a decent man could be corrupted. That's an interesting story point?
It is, and I'll go a bit further into that. So when we first meet her, she's wearing nothing but a beach towel because she's sunbathing out on the roof. And then I think it's when she gets prepared, like dressed and comes down, she's got the anklet on. And what's interesting is that so when a woman wears a bracelet, it usually is on the same hand of or same arm as the ring finger, so the left hand, so it draws you to the wedding ring. But when you put it on your ankle, it draws you to the legs, and then as you work your way up, it's like, well, you're seeing all this other parts of the woman before you acknowledge the fact that she's married, and that's where you get the signal of she's kind of she's willing to forget that little piece of jewelry on her ring finger.
It's negotiable. Yes.
It's negotiable. Yes.
Yeah.
And it seems to her like she was doing her own thing, and then as soon as Neff comes in and she's just wearing the towel, she's like, I've got this guy hook, line, and sinker. And it's a great example of what I love about film noir as well, especially for the Femme Fatale, is that they're playing like 4D chess in a very long game.
Yes, well put. I almost feel like you've tapped into the visual. You and I are people that love words, but there's also a visual script, a visual language, which film noir really brought into sharp focus, because you even have white clothes on the anti-heroine. Yep. She is presented. When I was doing Trouble Is My Business, I wanted the dark-haired girl who appears to be the bad one. Dark, dressed in black, but the good girl is the blonde, and she's light, and I literally dress her in white, and I think we respond to that as human beings on a primal level, because it's the white hat, dark hat, we're supposed to, but it's contrasted in this because there's the brightness of Southern California. Remember how he would pull up to the house and everything's brightly lit. You think of film noir always being at night or whatever, but I think it can be really effective when you have occasional brightness and contrast. You can explore this darkness because sometimes the evil is hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically because when you're hiding in plain sight, you're among everyone else, and that's where the camouflage kind of comes in. It's like all you have to do is just kind of look to your left or right and then mimic that, and you have mastered your disguise, so to speak. Where if you're trying to hide, somewhere where people aren't looking, you're obviously not supposed to be there because people don't normally look there, and that's why you're kind of like front and center and you're exposed, so to speak, because it's like, well, this is an out of place, out of character situation, and that's what I really liked about this genre, and specifically about this film, because I remember in film school, so many people were saying like, well, film noir is just black and white. It's like, well, no.
The opposite.
It's a genre of many other layers and details. Black and white was basically because it was cheaper to film it like that.
That's right. Color stock was so much more expensive. And also remember, film noir was a response to economic pressure. You didn't have MGM musical money where you could build $1 million set and light the thing. So they used negative space and darkness, or just a blank wall and a shadow, to evoke things. And it became a strength. They pulled that from influences in Germany and chiaroscuro lighting and expressionism, and it actually made it a lot more rich and lush.
And traditional theater as well, for simple sets, things of that nature, where they play around the lighting. And it really is kind of a cinematographer's dominant skill set of film noir, because they're able to do a like they can channel the director's narrative like approach, but it's film noir allows the cinematographer to play a lot more with the light and the frame in ways that you wouldn't need to in any other genre, although you definitely could, and obviously spruce up another genre with those techniques.
Yes, and we've seen it cross over into some of our favorite films. You and I were talking about, it's like, Blade Runner, obviously, the tech noir look of Terminator. There's a lot of great films that have taken that aesthetic. And one thing that stuck in my mind you might like is Billy Wilder was the director of this, and he was a writer, he's also a director, and he could do almost any genre. He did it really well. Yeah. But his DP, I believe his name was John Seitz, I think. But what he called, he called it textures of light. Yes. Is what he called the thing, and I thought, what a great term. I hadn't heard that before. Textures of light, that to bring the psychology out, the camera was using light, and you would have slow pans and intense close-ups, and the compositions could tilt or go off balance, but it was all in service of the words, the snappy dialogue, the plot was all served by these textures of light. And I thought, what a great
not only that,
way
even the crossfades. Like, I mean, we're jumping a little bit ahead in the movie, but it's a great example where Walter Neff is in his apartment, and then Phyllis comes in after their first meeting, and they kind of embrace, and then we cut to current time where Walter's talking about the plan that he was thinking of to try and pull this scheme off. And when we cut back to his apartment, they're on opposite sides of the sofa. She's like replacing makeup, and he's like having a cigarette, and exactly what they did there, but they got away with it because it's all about the subtleties of the blocking. The light is a lot softer, lighting is a lot softer in the room, so it's more like kind of like after like you have that like that after the adrenaline has come down, you kind of have like that shroud of dizziness and disorientation. You kind of get focused again.
Yes, after they intensely, obviously made love, there's that kind of refractory period and just off balance. And it's like, that was like a point of no return. That was a tipping point as a story point, because then he was in all the way,
and she literally knew she had him.
Yeah, she knew she had him. And you're right. I think with the limitations, and this is something else we've talked about, is with limitations, like certainly of the day with censorship or whatever, you had to find creative workarounds, and that's not a bad thing. Hey, brightest day for
brightest days here. All right, cool.
That's right. People are pouring in. Nut, hello, welcome. We're talking about one of our favorite films, Double Indemnity. Let us know if you've seen the film. Jump right in, and thank you, James Pond. No time to cry. I love it. And Troy
Pacelli.
I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, I'm having a great discussion with Script here about Double Indemnity, just to bring you up to speed. And we were talking about, I would think it's I believe it's one of the very first film noirs. And film noir really grew out of a phrase. It was dark film or shadows and night scenes. And you think of the rain-soaked streets that mark the genre. And we were talking about how light, or, Billy Wilder, the director, as DP, called it textures of light, how that serves the story. Yes, it's an incredible classic, Troy. It actually now you're a fan of the pulps. Did a Double Indemnity started? It's a James N. Cain novella. Was it part of a pulp? I don't know.
I think I might have been published in a pulp magazine.
Okay, I believe it was a serial.
Maybe it's a serial, but I do know that Raymond Chandler hated the dialogue, and I don't believe it, because I think Cain was kind of considered like good at concept but terrible on execution.
Interesting.
That's just going off of memory, because I read mostly, like, if I'm going to read like old style stuff, I'll read Walter B. Gibson, I'll read Raymond Chandler, I'll read.
I'm a huge Ross McDonald fan.
Yeah, right? A little bit of Ross McDonald.
Yeah. Lou McDonald, the partner in Trouble Is My Business, is named after Lou Archer, a character that Ross McDonald wrote a whole bunch of some of my favorite pulp hard-boiled books. So his name is a combination of Lou Archer and Ross McDonald. So it's a little nod to my favorite author. I think with Double Indemnity too, I think not only did it play really interestingly with the idea of an anti-hero and an anti-heroine, and we had talked about her introduction visually, and the white and the necklace and the sexuality, but I think it also kind of it looked, it was a way for like a light comedy actor to play against type. Fred McMurray was amazing in it, proving that even a nice guy can commit murder, which is such a film noir theme. He in reality, he was a nice guy, and he had all that baggage, that you bring to a film, but put him as the fast talking insurance salesman, and he could be corrupted. And I think that's something that the noir genre is trying to say, is that we have to be careful that even the best of people, there's an underbelly to human nature. Don't you think that's sort of what it tapped into in a deep vein, why it's still relevant?
It is, because again, it's like an exploitation of our own vulnerabilities. And what I really liked about this film is the fact that Jean Heather, who plays the daughter, she's kind of like the angel that reminds Neff of who he actually is, because she's kind of like walking the line. She's got that boyfriend who kind of doesn't really treat her all too great, and her dad doesn't like him. But she's waiting in his car. She's like, maybe you can give me a ride downtown. And he's thinking, okay, fine. And then as he talks with her, he learns that, yeah, she's trying to cope with her own situation. She doesn't like her stepmother. I think it's after that scene where we learn a bit more about the situation. But
yeah,
when he does drop her off, and the boyfriend is immediately jealous, because you can tell from that action that he knows he doesn't deserve this wonderful young woman.
Yeah.
and Walter Neff is like just treating her like a kid, and as he should. He's like looking out for her a little bit. And then when we move a little bit later, where the policy's being claimed and they can't, and they might be being watched, he's actually interacting a lot with that daughter and just kind of like being a father figure to her, and he's questioning himself of like, what is he doing?
Yes, exactly.
And it's like she's the hope that he has, but it's like he's already been tempted and committed to her stepmother, but at the same time he's like, he wants to look out for this girl because her father has been murdered. He killed her father.
That's right.
And she has nobody to trust, and he's still that good guy deep down. And I think he's like, partly, is he trying to convince himself that he's still the good guy, or is he trying to do this because out of guilt, or is he trying to just get information to sway or throw off his supervisor, played by the amazing Edward G. Robinson, who just steals the movie?
Oh, he's great. He's a stalwart as a character actor. He was in so many good film noir. James Pond points out the earliest noir was one of my favorites, Maltese Falcon, 1941. Edward, he was such a great either leading man or character actor. He was utterly believable. You never caught him at acting. You just went, no, that guy, that's how he is. That's just him doing him. I'm so blown away by what a good actor he is that I wonder what he was like in real life. I wonder, was he like that at all, or was this just the most brilliant act over decades where you just don't know the real him, because he's so believable in the roles that he has. And he's one of those guys who could play almost anything, evil, good, middle management. He could be a detective. He could be a put upon guy having a middle-age crisis. He was able to do anything. And I think his experience made him handle, and you can speak to this as a writer, the long speeches they gave him as a character. He handled them the way you would handle Shakespeare. He makes them sound natural. He handles them so expertly, but if you watch it again, watch how good he is with the words when he's talking to him. He has really long speeches as keys. That was his character.
Yes.
And I feel like he was someone that a writer could trust. He was the insurance company claims manager, which is sort of a detective, right?
He's a claims manager. He signs off on real claims and fake, and basically knocks off fake claims. And I think it comes back to something that I learned this from Louis Beaumander, who is an acting coach in Canada, who taught Eric McCormick and Keanu Reeves and a slew of others. And he was just like, you just have to be fully committed. So first you have to be committed to the lines. Second, you have to understand the lines. And then on top of that, you have to understand the concept between action and behavior. So and with Edward G. Robinson, it was basically, it's like this guy just made sure he knew why the character spoke this way or were saying these specific words.
Yes.
And he just threw himself into it. And I mean, his famous speech, one that I I tried to memorize. It's really difficult too, but it's like he's talking to Norton, his boss, right? He's like, yeah, you in the front office, come on now, you've never read an actual table in your life, have you? You've got 10 volumes on suicide loans, suicide by race, by color, by occupation, by sex, by seasons of the year, by time of day, suicide how committed, by poison, by firearms, by drowning, by leaks, suicide by poison, subdivided by types of poison, such as corrosive, irritant, systemic, gaseous, narcotic, alkaloid, protein, and so forth. And it just goes on, and he just rambles it off like he's an expert because he is.
Because he is. He means it. He means it.
And he does it in one shot, too. And that's like, that's the clincher, because, I mean,
that's the thing.
So many things now where a monologue is broken up with like reverse shots and everything else.
He just owns the screen, and that's the thing. Even people in the chat, if you take another look at Double Indemnity, something that's missing from a lot of movies now. Certainly, there are indie movies, and there's certainly some movies that have incredible dialogue, incredible stuff. But if you look at a movie like Double Indemnity, the love of words, the snappy dialogue, and what it says about the characters, that is for grown-ups. And that is something that cannot be lost. Film is a visual media, and nothing's more visual than film noir. But the reason these films are classic is not only do you have that beautiful look and that stylized way that it's shot and told, but you also have a love of words and words revealing character. And if you heard script just now, I mean, just think of all of that just dense dialogue that just effortlessly flowed off of them. And some of the best roles for women, particularly Barbara Stanwyck, that was probably her best role, was Phyllis Dietrichson. She, I would say she's a wife who has a husband she'd rather not have.
Husband she sought after, and then realized the mistake she made, and then on top of that, she makes that role work given how terrible the wig they put her in.
Yes, she does.
With the fake bangs and everything, and she just makes it work.
She's a classic femme fatale, and that, that role, that particular ironic sort of contrast to the way she presents herself, the blonde with the white clothes, the wig I thought made her look kind of sleazy, and the sweater, and I think her entrance in the towel it really pushed the buttons, of male energy, female energy, the masculine and the feminine, and some of our deepest fears about women using us or being bad for us. The way she kind of descended the staircase in that opening was her descending into his life, and they have this sexy dialogue that has all the, Billy Wilder always put double meanings and things to try and get past production code, but all of it was working together to let her hint at the possibility without actually saying it. She wanted someone to murder her husband. And when he refuses her, he's like, hey, I think he says something like, the hook's too strong. Yeah. And then she shows up again. And after they make love, he says, okay, we're going to do it, but we're going to do it right, which is, it's got to be perfect. And with that phrase, he's linked up to the plot right there. Like that right there links the two of them together. And I just think that's just a tribute to how much character, story, and plot can be together. Because there's a difference between story, plot. There's a definite delineation, though. And when they all work together, that's when you get something where it's working on so many levels. You have to look at it a couple times to go, what did they do to make this? How did I get here so fast? Why am I all in on the murder of this poor guy?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I like a lot about the pulp genres and film noir, is that on the surface it feels like it's plot driven, but it's actually quite character driven. The plot is just so simple that because their motivations are so strong with that goal, it carries themselves away, because they always dig themselves deeper into a hole. Because again, when you're doing, like, the motivations in film noir are never for honorable reasons, and you're kind of looking more at the prize and not the process to get there. And Walter Neff is trying his best throughout this entire film to look at the course to get to the prize, but he screws up with like 3 key elements. Yeah. And those key elements are, number one, the insurance policy for the husband that signed it under false pretenses. Yes. And as a result, when he got injured, he didn't make a claim. So that's your first red flag. The second one is that he tripped over his crutches and fell off a train at 15 miles an hour. So how did he die of that?
How did he die? Yeah, it wasn't clean. It wasn't perfect. Yeah.
And then what was the third aspect? There's a crap.
It'll occur to you. Yeah, it'll occur to you.
It'll occur to me later, but those are the first two that are your red flags that Walter Neff didn't account for. It's like, well, if he broke his leg and he had this insurance, he should have filed a claim. Like, why wouldn't he file a claim? And it's like, oh crap, that's a mistake. He didn't think about that. He didn't realize that. That's
right. It's like a nightmare, isn't it? It's film noir taps into almost a nightmare state where you're like, once the tumblers start going, one domino falls off, and it's like, wait, we didn't do that right. Now I'm going to get caught, but I can't get out, and this person is going to kill me now if I try and get away from them. And now I'm getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. And you say this sometimes, and I encourage people to look at your service. You're terrific as a script doctor, and in analyzing scripts. I encourage anybody that's thinking about writing to hire you to take a look at their scripts and break it down, because you always say this, and Double Indemnity is a perfect example. Simple plot, complex characters.
Yes, absolutely. Because this is the one thing I loved the best about this is, like, after we get into that second act where he's like, Neff's like, I planned it all out. This is how it works for Double Indemnity. So instead of a $50,000 claim, you get $100,000, and all he has to do is has to be on a train. Like, it can't be in the normal workplace where the possibility is already there. It has to be outside of it. And I think also within that time, it probably could have. I think he probably could have also worked if his car broke down and he got into an accident that way. It might have also been double indemnity plus car insurance. So he would have been like almost triple.
Triple Indemnity is the sequel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah.
And it was all about just manipulating him to get on that train. So, like, we knew it one step at a time. The first one is get him on the train.
Yes.
And then once we get that arranged, it's like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kill him before he gets on the train. I'm going to get on the train pretending to be him. Then I'm going to jump off the train and we throw the body on the tracks. And it's easy to follow because it's just basically, okay, we kill him first. We put myself on the train to pose as him. We we ditch the body so that can be found. We're home free. And you think it's very simple, easy to follow. And then once we get, Keys involved in this, at first he just says, yep, okay, this is an accidental death. We'll pay it out. And then as the owner gets involved, he's like, no, I think it's suicide. And he's like, there's no way it's suicide. Back to that little brief part of the monologue I spoke earlier. And then that's when he starts thinking more.
Yes.
Because if the owner did not bring it up as a possibility for suicide, I think they would have been scot-free. But because he pretty much pumped the brakes on Keys is like, now he gets the time to think. And
that's right.
Going into it, and he's like, yeah, all these things don't add up. He thinks it's murder.
Yeah, and they gift Keys with such a great thing in the writing where he has a sensitive stomach. You remember that?
Yes.
He has an eagle eye and a sensitive stomach. I think his character, was his first name Barton? It was Barton Keys.
Barton Keys, and he never carried matches because they would always explode in his pocket.
See, I love stuff like that, like little grace notes like that in a script and a character are fantastic. And yes, once he gets his teeth into something, he never lets go. Like it,
just like a terrier.
Neff says, I'm trying to remember the line. I'll probably mess it up, but it's a wolf on a phony claim.
Yes,
and I think that's a great distillation through dialogue of who they are. And just think about this: the film itself is timeless, because even though the situations, the cars, the things might change, human nature doesn't. You can still take this idea and you can look at People magazine, and there's someone somewhere who's working some angle that gets pulled into this whole dark sort of noir underbelly of human nature, and they get in deeper and deeper and deeper, and they can't get out. And there's something about Double Indemnity as a cautionary tale. He's an anti-hero, but he could still be you or I in the wrong set of circumstances. When I'm talking about film noir, I often pitch it as we all have a friend who's heading for a brick wall, and we keep saying, "Don't do it. She's bad. She's bad for you. That's a bad idea." And they go and they hit it anyway. And I think this movie, if you were on a deserted island and you and I wanted to show somebody, like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by film noir? And say, you know what? Let's watch Double Indemnity, because not only is it a dark film, but it's about ambition and lust and guilt, or I would even say mistrust, wouldn't you? It seems like the inner life of the characters are built on on the kind of mirroring of the darkness of the way it's lit. They mistrust each other, and the psychology is brought out. I don't know, was it written with his usual writing partner? Was it Diamond that he wrote this with? I don't remember.
No, I think it was primarily Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler did the screenplay, and they both like butted heads all the time with it. I think Diamond was
working on something else, right? Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Was he? Hold on, I can pull that up. But yeah, he has this other writer that he does. I think Diamond was with In Old Chicago, maybe.
Oh, okay. Wow, can you imagine though? Even if they butt heads, you've got Raymond Chandler writing dialogue with you.
Which it was his first screenplay.
Yeah.
And what the other part too is, and I remember, I think I told a writing student of this years ago when we see Barton Keyes' introductory scene, and it feels like at first glance you think it's a superfluous scene just to introduce this character and dish out exposition, but it's actually setting up who Barton Keyes is and how the insurance claims work out, because you have this guy who he set his truck on fire to get the claim so that he could either buy a new truck or whatever.
Right.
And Keyes is like, no, I'm denying this, and I'm going to call you out on it, and I'm doing this so I can teach you a lesson not to try and pull this crap again, because I want to make sure that you are an honest man, because, again, we are going to maintain our business relationship in the future. Once you get a new truck, we will cover you again because we know you're not going to do this. And that entire setup is Barton Keyes showing us how this guy is actually – he is a good-hearted person, because he could have sent him to the police and got him arrested for fraud. He's like, no, just sign this paper to refute your claim, and you're an honest man again, and you're good to go, and there's no problems anymore, and you can still be a client of ours, and all that type of stuff. And it's like other people in his position would be first, we're going to deny your claim, then we're going to report you to the police because you're trying to commit fraud, and then now you're really screwed. As opposed to this guy's like, you made a mistake. This is how it's going to work. I know it was a faulty claim. I know exactly how it is. I know we sent investigators out. They found, butane or whatever it was in there. And it's setting you all up on the things that Walter Neff has to start thinking about when he proposes the plot of getting rid of Mr. Dietrichson. And it's all relationship. And the reason that Neff is brought in there is because what we find out later is that Keyes wants to promote him as a claims
that's right guy. That's right, ironically. And he's just kind of like wetting his beak at it, so to speak, and Neff has no idea that's going to be the case, right? Like, because he's brought in there, he doesn't do anything, he's just there to observe. And it's like, well, why is he there? But it's a nice little setup that gets paid off later when he's like, listen, you're too good to be a salesman, you know all your policies, you are one of the few guys I trust, and I want you to work beside me in this thing. And Neff is like, I'm a salesman. I don't do that stuff. I have my own plans, my own things I want to do. He's almost fatherly, which makes the disappointment harder, isn't it? Because he kind of takes him under his wing. So the betrayal is not just professional, but personal.
I think it's like 11 years. Like Neff has been there, and then he's been 17 or something of that nature. Yeah.
So and it's a personal betrayal.
It's a personal betrayal. It's a personal relationship, and it's one where even by the end, when Keyes shows up, because the janitor says, Walter came in and I saw some blood, and Keyes is like, I have to get back to this to the office.
Exactly. And
yep,
it's hard to do. Well, we're writers, so it's hard to do an exposition dump like that at the beginning to explain. You have to explain, the rules of the universe, or what the thing's going to be about, like what double indemnity is. But I always call it the Pope swimming in the swimming pool to distract you from the fact he's doing an entire exposition dump. You need to find something interesting and organic going on so that you can explain and in other words, set the table in an organic way, because that information is necessary, but it's dry. It's hard to put an emotion to a definition of double indemnity. And I thought this did really well. When you approach exposition, are there little tricks you like to use?
But primarily I want to make sure that if I have to explain something, I have to justify why the character is saying it, and I have to make sure the character that is speaking that exposition is saying it to someone who, by all accounts, should have no idea of what is about to be said. Like, for instance, as we were just talking about this, there's that little monologue I wrote for the character that you be playing in one of the scripts that we're writing, where he's like, I didn't want a murder. I was trying to build up a family, not start a war. Like that little monologue there.
Yes.
That is me trying to channel classic film noir style
Yes.
dialogue there.
Yeah, I felt that and that you captured that really well, in that my character was revealing himself in the dialogue, and you were moving everything forward, which, everything has to move the story forward. But what you did really elegantly in that line for my character was you also set the table of these are the lines, these are the rules, this is what his internal life is feeling right now, because people don't tend to just go, I'm feeling really scared right now. They usually talk around it. And you're good at that as a writer. One of the reasons I really enjoy our collaboration now is you make it naturalistic, but it still needs to, and this is important for anyone who wants to write, it still needs to serve the story. It still needs to reveal character, or it shouldn't be in the script, because knowing what to leave out of the script is as important as what you put in the script.
Yeah, and the other part too is I angled that conversation to be trying to appeal to empathy to the other character, who he's dragged into the situation. He doesn't know why he's here. He sees it. It's a horrible thing. And he's basically saying, yes, I know this is a horrible thing. This is not what I wanted. But in order for me to make sure that the outcome that I want succeeds, I need you to do this.
Yes.
And it's basically the negotiation. And that's the other part too. With exposition, you can do a lot as long as you're appeasing to what one character wants and what one character doesn't know, or what that other character wants as well. And you just have to make it kind of natural. Like the worst thing you can do is, and I point to maybe say you're in a military situation. Like a general is not going to tell another general something that general already knows.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do, they're doing it to serve the audience, not serve the characters.
Right.
What that general should be doing is telling it to a private. Like you just got out of basics. Like, listen, this is the battle plan. This is why we're doing it. You're going to be on the front line and you might die.
Yeah,
but I'm going to tell you what you're dying for.
Yeah, that is so true, and it drives me crazy in modern movies where literally the team is deploying at the location, and they go, "Okay, here's what we're going to do," and they break down what the plan is literally while they're hopping out of the back of a van or rappelling down something. I'm like, shouldn't we have talked about this before? Yeah. So you're right. It needs to be either to someone who wouldn't know, or at least at an appropriate time in it, or do time shifting. Double Indemnity does something that Christopher Nolan would be proud of, in that it effortlessly moves around in time. We start with a guy with crutches. Mm-hmm. We move backwards into a confession to Keys, talking about what he's done almost in retrospect. And I think if you can deftly move the plot along so that you show the audience different things they need or want to know, even out of order, you can even play with that traditional act structure. You don't necessarily have to have the beginning be the beginning or the ending be the ending, but that requires even more discipline, and that's something, if someone came to us with a script or something, we would look at and say, look, if you're going to get fancy and start flipping between times and do all this, it has to be even more airtight, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely, because again, the beginning of the story is always going to be the beginning of how it's introduced to the audience. So it's definitely not always going to be the beginning of that character's adventure.
Right.
And that's why whenever I see something where it opens up, say, like in Double Indemnity, it opens up with his confession and then it does a time jump back.
Yes.
It's done a bit more organically because it's also a bit more natural, because we know the outcome at this point, and now we're just following up like how we got here. Where then you take something different, like more modern, like say for instance Sonic the Hedgehog, where we're at the start of the climax where he's running away from Mr. Robotnik and what have you, and then it pauses in a freeze frame and says, "Now let me tell you how I got here."
Yeah, here's how I got here. Yeah.
This is not exactly as organic as Double Indemnity because you basically just try to pique our attention with a very cheap hook, and now you're going to give us a bunch of boring stuff until we get to that point. Where in this one here, what makes it more interesting is that we're set up with some mystery.
Yes.
Neff is injured. He's bleeding out. He goes into an office and he starts making a recording. It's like, well, why is he making a recording? Well, probably because that injury is worse than it actually is. That's actually right. Looks. And then he's delivering this speech to clearly a very good friend and a trustworthy friend.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying like, maybe this is a confession, but maybe I'm just give you all the things out. And he just says like, you checked all three boxes. Was it suicide? No. Was it accident? No. Was it murder? You bet.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom.
I love that. That's so hard boiled.
And so it's the presence itself is what is the hook. And now it's like, okay, now I've got the hook and this actual action. It's a mystery, and I don't know all the finer details. I do know the premise of it. Now you have basically asked for and earned permission to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it starts off strong. It's basically saying, I've been trying to get this Mr. Dietrichson to renew his policy before it expires. And I finally, I went to his house because he wasn't picking up his phone or what have you. I meet the cleaning lady, and then the first woman I see is his wife, naked but wearing nothing but a towel. And it's like, I'm going to stay here for a while. And you're already on board. and everything just kind of spirals and escalates from there. And I love the fact that at the start, he calls her Mrs. Dietrichson. And then as soon as they have their night together, he just keeps calling her baby. And the way he says it is just so silly because it doesn't feel natural. Because it's just like Walter Neff's like, yeah, come on, baby. You just got to keep it still. Keep it cool. Don't lose your head. Just, whisper. Don't speak too loudly, baby. And it's just like, it just feels off. But it's just kind of feels also at the same time like Neff's never been in this position before.
True.
And he just doesn't know how to say it. He's like, I'm worried that if I say your name, it maybe someone of Key's spies will listen in and see that I'm actually talking to you. Maybe that's what he's doing it for.
Yeah,
we don't know, but it feels so odd.
Yeah, it really does.
At the same time, all the other dialogue is great. It's like the innuendo that's thrown in there. The casualness, the way he struts into a room, like tosses his hat on the chair and just keeps going without missing a beat.
Yeah, it's cool. It's just he's a cool character when he needs to be, and it goes to his confession at the beginning. It goes to that thing we were talking about earlier, which is the unreliable narrator or the reliable narrator. You're not sure if you're being told the truth. A confession I have to make is the reason. My film Trouble in My Business actually opens with a guy pulling up. He's been shot in the arm. You can kind of, if you look closely, you see a bandage that's bleeding. That's the only real-time part of the movie. Everything else is flashbacks within flashbacks, and he's injured. And one of the reasons I have the line be "Take me to the cemetery. She's still alive," which those two lines don't belong together. But also, it sets the stage very much like Double Indemnity did. Even better because it's a classic. Double Indemnity set the stage that he was acknowledging the sort of father-son relationship was corrupted between him and Key's, character, the older man that trusted him and looked at him as a son. He let that woman come between them, and it eroded that trust. And he had to confess to him what he did wrong, knowing that he was probably going to die, knowing that he was going to break the old man's heart. He said, I love you to him. And in the confession, he's like, I really did too, you old crab. He says to him, and this woman kind of interceded and used him. And that's a primal male fear, is that, this powerful sexual woman comes in and corrupts or uses you, and you think you're getting one thing and you're not. And I feel like the flashback aspect of it just played perfectly into the inevitable, into the sort of fatalistic thing that would take over film noir. But remember, this is one of the absolute first. We had this, and we had Maltese Falcon, and even more than Maltese Falcon, which would, again, the ending of Maltese Falcon was fantastic because it was the thing that dreams were made of. It was all about nothing, and people destroying each other. This was seeing someone's dream of a happy life and of getting away with murder, seeing that destroyed, and seeing that murder scheme sort of peel open like an onion and reveal the rotten heart of it, and I find that fascinating.
I also think of it as like a very clever warning sign, which is don't let the superficial fuel your desires. Because that's all it is. Because they're all like, they're thinking more about the fantasy of like, yes, we'll be happy together. We'll have $100,000. We'll be away from it all. It's like, but that's just on the surface. There's nothing about personality being exchanged between these two. It's all lust and physical and financial. It's all the things that don't really matter overall with life, especially when you contrast this genre with an actual romance where it starts off superficial and then there's the depth found, and then there's some sort of wrench thrown in between the relationship, and both parties are doing everything they can to fight for survival because there's something real there. Where in this one here, any type of obstacle is thrown in, it's really just about the money.
Yeah, exactly. And there is no family. There is no real love. You had the love of a father for his son, in that, you know, Keyes had that feeling for Neff,
Yep.
and he wants repentance. You know, he's repenting to him. But the only family they had was each other. There was there was an absence of family, which Billy Wilder, I think, kind of played into that. The, you know, partners in crime, they met at the supermarket. Do you remember the scene? They met in the supermarket. And there's a Neff is, I think there's baby food or something. He goes, "Can you reach that package of baby food?"
Oh,
and
yeah, for
and,
the woman,
and he calls Phyllis, the woman, baby. You know, it's like and so at the heart of it, it was kind of like a twisting around of, you know, traditional family. It was of the traditional roles of all of that, and film noir kind of turned it all on its head and exposed the underbelly of it. But to me, the very key of it was the themes of sex and money getting entangled, and identity shifting and changing. You know, he was the good man, quote unquote, who was the salesman who gets shifted into a murderer. She was the discontent housewife who actually just was playing all these guys for what she wanted. And then you, at its core, you had the one person who kind of look for the truth, even if it destroyed him, which was Keyes, who was kind of the father figure to him. And you know, why does he confess to Keyes at all? That's an interesting question. You know,
I think that's answered by the fact that so Keyes is talking to Neff in one scene where he learns that Neff has got a girl, and he doesn't know who it is, and he doesn't trust the girl that he's dating, even though he's never met her or heard anything about her.
right?
And what he ends up saying is he talks about how he got engaged once, and he was all about the love and everything, but there's that little voice inside that said, you know what, I better do a background check on her. And he does.
Mm-hmm.
Finds all this stuff on here that was just a nightmare. Would have made his life terrible, and it made
right
together. And so he did the hardest thing, which he had to do, which ended it. And it shows you that for a relationship, it wasn't about just the superficial; it was about the long term. And that was him trying to give a warning to Neff. It's like, listen, you're with this dame, that, you know, is giving you everything that you want out of a relationship, or so you think, but it's not what's going to sustain you.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a very subtle message saying, like, listen, if you're going to be with a woman who's willing to kill her husband for a few $1,000s, what do you think she's going to do to you if she can get more?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're going to be next. And she literally confesses she's totally rotten and never loved it.
Yeah,
you know, it's pretty amazing. If I were approaching writing this, I guess you and I would just map it out almost. We'd have to look at it mathematically, wouldn't we?
I think so. Yeah, it would just be like pacing.
All the overlapping flashbacks, flashback to, and having it all intersect. And then if I were writing it, I wonder if I wouldn't write backwards sometimes from the end.
I would probably write it in a weird format. The first one being kind of like the journal of the Femme Fatale, like what her situation is, how she got there, and what she wants out of it. And then thinking, okay, from that, who is the best archetype or best person in best financial position, what have you, that would be most susceptible to what her plan would be. And then you would figure who that guy is and then work out his life. And then try and figure out, well, how did these two people meet? And then what do we know about the woman that I've written? What do we know about the guy that I've written? How would they meet? And how would she be able to present her victimhood to him to seduce him into, you know, compromising his own perfectly happy life
yes.
For a shot at this type of woman who is in the situation. And then I would work it from there, where I would basically say, okay, this is her plan. Her plan is, I'm going to kill my husband, and I'm going to get someone else to plan it for me. and that's because that's essentially what it is in Double Indemnity. Is like, she doesn't know how to do it, and she doesn't want her hands dirty in it at all.
Right.
She's just going to manipulate somebody to do it. And I would probably work from that aspect. And then once I would figure out, okay, so once I figure out who the victim is going to be, which is in this case the man is the victim in film noir.
Yes, he is.
And the woman is being the antagonist. Yeah, I would just kind of work from that as my background motivation for their plot. So I just have to figure out, okay, what does the guy want, and how does that bring it to her, and then how much far can I take his want until he's with her long enough to forget of that initial want and just want what she wants.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of like goes off the rails, so to speak. Like from his perspective, it goes off the rails and onto her track, and now he's just kind of whisked away. And from there, it's just focusing on the cause and effect aspects of it. But even from that part, like my methodology would be getting that first draft down, then reverse engineering it, like re-outlining it from there, and then start picking into the parts where you can have fun with the back and forth between the femme fatale and our hero and the mentor figure, if there's one there, or like the best friend, and then all the social dynamics around that, and then just kind of like re-outline it again. Once that outline is kind of reset, then you hit go back to draft, and then you just pull all the favorite stuff that you remember from that first draft and weave it through until you get something nice and solid. It's because again, screenwriting is really complicated, and I've said this on other streams. I've said it on Twitter. It's like it's the one part of entertainment where everybody thinks they can do it until they start.
Yeah, that is so true. And a script, you know, as somebody who directs film and loves to write, one of the reasons I love writing with you is you think about structure, you think about character and things. Myself, I often start also with images, things that I might look at the film establishing like the downfall of the character from that opening scene. That first 20 seconds inform the theme and the insight. So if I were outlining the script, I would be like, opening image, that states the theme. And I would think visually about that. Or, we see road workers at the beginning with lanterns and they're guiding traffic. Well, that's saying avoid danger. The car goes by and ignores a stoplight. That's the film. The opening image. I encourage everybody, go look at Double Indemnity. The opening minute of the film, a car zooms past a stoplight and ignores the warning signs of danger, and then that danger is repeated throughout the film with the constant sort of him avoiding this warning, this red flag, so much, even if you look at it from a standpoint of, was the femme fatale dangerous, or did she even cause the destruction, or did the character internally do it? All of that to me breaks down to scenes. I can hear dialogue and imagery. So something like Double Indemnity deserves revisiting. If you can find it on Blu-ray or find it online, watch it again, because you look at the archetypes, the dark sides of our personality. It's a relevant film. It's not an old movie. It's not a good for you film because it's considered a classic. The reason it's classic is because, like a really good book or any other work of art that still speaks to you, it's the animalistic side of our impulses.
Actually it's a great warning message, because for anyone that's like 12 years old, if you're ever listening to this, watch it, because it'll save you a lot of grief in high school. Just because of the social structures that are in high school, which is actually something that's in there. Like there's hierarchies of popularity, and that is true. People fill in certain roles. Like sometimes it's president of student council, sometimes it's a cheerleader, sometimes it's a sport athlete, sometimes it's a dramatic artist, sometimes it's a I don't know, the hall monitors, like it's all over the place in various different roles and positions of it. But it all kind of plays into it, because what's interesting about Neff, and this is what I really liked, as the fact that he's a salesperson, but specifically for insurance, is that his fatal flaw is his own arrogance.
Yes. And he self-sabotages.
There's nothing more arrogant than a salesperson.
Yeah, that is true. And he self-sabotages with that. The downfall of your own ego is very big, and something to look for in that film, because you have to keep that in check. That his arrogance, he thinks he's above it all. He thinks he can get away with it, but fate is always there. There is always a reckoning. There always has to be something paid. No matter how elaborate the plot or how simple they think, a simple murder is, you're gonna get caught in this world. And I thought, Wilder really caught that in the film, and certainly, the original source material, I'm sure, had it as well. I did look it up, and it was an 8-part serial by James M. Cain in Liberty magazine.
Oh, and, nice.
So again, the pulps. I think you and I need to write something that's a pulp, like a pure pulp, whether it's sci-fi or hard-boiled or some combination of it, because the pulps were such a great rich sort of training ground for great stories and really edgy stuff, but also just great genre stuff. And this film, it grew right out of it. It was a novella that became a classic film. And I have to speak to the music as well.
Oh, yeah.
Is such great. It's Miklos Rosa, I believe, right? Rosa? Yeah, it was Rosa. I believe it was. And it had that kind of strings and lush sound, but also used some dissonance and was all very important to that mood. You have snappy dialogue, witty dialogue with these double entendres, and on top of it all, it's musical. When we're doing dialogue, it feels musical. Like when we read it back to each other, you know how it feels right. You're like, no, that's a beat there. You would say this and you would stop. Well, that's music, and that's the same feel that you would have writing a piece of music you have with dialogue. It just feels right. It has the beats right. And in the case of this film, the music really served it well because it just underscores it beautifully and is iconic. He was a great composer. And in this case, you don't hear much said about the soundtrack to this film, but one of the reasons this film is so good is the sound. The use of sound in this film is extraordinary, and it's overlapping dialogue and its music, and just the use of silence and quiet is also good because they had to get around censors. You can't show a murder, you can't do these things. So everything had to be implied. So pushing against censorship challenged the artist towards, in my opinion, some greatness.
Like that little like kind of crescendo they do when Neff comes from the back seat and strangles.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
It's done, and we don't see it. I think we hold on. This is Phyllis Dietrichson there.
That's correct.
While it's happening, and the fact that she has no emotion.
Yes,
or no
makes it even more chilling.
Oh, it's so chilling. You don't get often like scenes of that nature anymore.
No, they would just show the murder. Yeah,
they would just show the murder.
Yeah.
They would ruin your imagination as a result of it because it's like an overstimulation, so to speak. It's like, oh
yes,
my God,
we become numb to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, like they do that. He does the music kind of like the high pitch type of like the build up to it, and then like the dramatic like waning of like the horns and the strings.
Yep.
And then I think he does that again when he's on the phone with Phyllis, and she's like, "Can I come over?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Just make sure nobody sees you." And then as soon as he hangs up the phone, there's a knock on his door.
Knock on the door.
Keys, and now you're like, "Oh my God, it's a ticking clock!" It's like the best thing ever. He's like, he's got to get him out of there before she shows up because if she shows up, it's done.
It's so beautifully. Yeah. You know she's on her way, and they have him knock on the door the minute he hangs up. Yeah,
because he's like, well, that was quick, and then it's not. Same height, but not the same body.
Yeah, but not the same body. Yeah. Again, the snappy dialogue. I love snappy dialogue like that.
I love the snappy dialogue, especially what Keyes does in here. But the other part too, and this is something that I don't think that this is something that threw me off because again, I've lived in apartment buildings and doors don't open outward. And the only reason that scene works is because he opens the door outward and she hides behind it as Keyes is like saying his goodbye and then taking the elevator.
That's a good point.
Normally the door would be opening inside the apartment, so she'd have nowhere to hide unless he lived like kind of at a corner hallway and she was like around the corner. But I know why they did that is because they had shot in an actual like a really quickly built set.
Yeah, exactly. And they needed the set to do that, as a conceit. That's one of those times where as a filmmaker, you're like, look, I need her to be behind this thing. I know the physics are wrong, but let's make this work. And but the thing is that scene is played out so perfectly for suspense. Yes.
Because there's literally only inches between these two characters that shouldn't where one of them should know that the other one is not supposed to be there.
Exactly.
And it's all time point. And then Neff kind of picks up on that and sort of like senses her, probably smells her perfume. The fact that Keyes doesn't, I think, has to do with the fact he's smoking a cigar.
Yeah, he's got his cigar, and he's not looking for something. He actually let his guard down because he trusts him, and trusting someone is a negative in film noir. It's a weakness, and you're absolutely right about the sound. The murder, it's taboo to show it in detail, so Neff is in the back seat, and I think he's breaking Dietrichson's neck or something.
Or like asphyxiate him at least, yeah.
Yeah, and they point the camera not at Dietrichson or Neff, but they point at her driving, and she smirks.
Yeah.
You know, and that acting is great because, again, you were talking about the three themes. I think the three themes of the movie come out in that: transport, you know, going somewhere, train, doing all that; the evil of women, and sex in the body. It touches on all the things that they're saying, that woman is temptation, is evil. The body, you know, the murder, but it's all embodied in that kind of smirk that she hears her hated husband die, you know, and that pushing against that censorship made Wilder create a masterpiece because he had limitations that he was working in. And if you look at Double Indemnity now, it still resonates, even though it's you know, a movie. What is it, 80 years old, more than 80 years old?
90, almost.
Almost 90 years
41. So, was it 41 or 45?
I think it was 45. I think.
Yes, 45.
Yeah.
So 44. So, yeah, it's still almost, you know, 80-ish years old.
Yeah, and it's still incredibly relevant because it's so well made, but it's ultimately it's about humans. It's about people. And I think the best films are like that. You know, if you look at a science fiction film, or if you look at a great detective film, or any genre film,
even a romantic drama, like it's
exactly
about the people. Yeah, we want them to get together, type of thing.
You want them to get together, and most importantly, it's about people. Like if you watch a trailer and the first minute of it is all things, like a boat and a building and a thing, you know you're in trouble, because a movie is supposed to be about people and faces and the human experience. You can have it set against a canvas of an incredible world and all these other things, but you have to feel something. And you said it best: suspense. Most movies don't ever build suspense about something. You're handed it, or it's foreshadowed so far in advance that they've taken all the air out of it. You have to build tension, anticipation. Even in comedy, even in a love scene, there's that rubber band of tension, that pulling back and forth, that we don't know where it's going to go, what to expect. That you don't want to break that tension until the right moment, and then the release is almost like in horror, it's the jump, it's the scare. Yeah. In comedy, the release is a laugh. So in a weird way,
and in film noir, the release is a sigh.
It's an almost resigned sigh of, yeah, you know what, it can happen. It could happen to me. You've got to. You think you're above it all, but you could get caught up in this web and go, how did I end up here? And also, you can look and you can see in your neighbor this ideal situation, and well, what a great life they have, and mine isn't. But underneath it all, it might all be corrupt. There might have been so many compromises made to have them superficially, you know, it's like the Instagram effect. It's like the Instagram picture is the highlight reel of everyone's life. And you go, oh my God, you went to Jamaica, you did this or that. But what compromises did that person make the other 364 days to end up there?
Yeah.
And so I feel like Double Indemnity is a film that anybody that loves just the human experience, that loves cinema, that loves writing, good writing, filmmaking, or just is a person who loves a great story, Double Indemnity is something you should seek out, revisit. Unfortunately, a lot of streaming services don't have it because it's in black and white. I went through this fight myself with my own film because it was black and white. People wouldn't put it on the streaming service. But find it. Physical media, rent it, find it, because Double Indemnity
it might be on Turner Classic Movies too. So
it might be, but you know, you have to look for it and when it might be available. I encourage everybody.
Because this is a Paramount film from like the olden days of Paramount.
Yeah, Paramount used to do amazing stuff.
They did used to do amazing up until about a decade ago. They used to do amazing stuff.
Yes, they did. Other than the Mission Impossible films, they really don't have much going on there, and it's a shame.
Yeah.
But
and I wanted to go back a little bit more to that scene in the car where Phyllis just has that smirk, because everything that happens up to that point. So Barbara Stanwyck is playing the exact same type of. Well, she's weaponizing the game that her stepdaughter is doing, that Lola, Jean Heather, is doing. Because everything that Jean Heather is doing with Walter Neff is pure honesty. Like, she doesn't want anything out of him. She's just saying, like, these are some of my issues. I need someone to talk to. I need someone to listen to me. I'm not manipulating you. But she's going through the same type of emotions that Phyllis is actually just emulating but not really experiencing. And she's added in that temptation of sex to Walter Neff in order to get what she wants, where Lola's just innocent. She doesn't even care about that type of stuff. She's like, Mr. Neff, you're just a nice man who helped my father and, you know, did all this stuff and was looking out for our family as an insurance adjuster, which is so ironic. And she's so innocent to him, to the point where even when you find out that I guess her boyfriend is kind of also being manipulated by Phyllis as well. When they confront her, like Neff's saying, like, you know, Lola's a good girl. She doesn't, like, you don't deserve her, and you know you don't deserve her, but I'm giving you a chance where you can save your hide right now and leave and not go and see Phyllis, and you can go, you know, give her a call and be the man that she wants you to be. And it's funny because he's so aware of Lola, but at the same time, he's not 100% quite aware of what Phyllis is doing, even though the game is, they're both playing like the same game, but one is playing it to manipulate, the other one is playing it just for empathy.
Right.
And it just shows this great dichotomy of like, what should Walter Neff really be focusing on? Well, you know, he's wronged this young innocent girl. He should probably be responsible for that, but instead he's just being so easily, well, I don't know if it's so easily, but he's just being definitely seduced and manipulated by this woman, because it's not just the temptation of sex, it's the temptation of like ease. Like there's no difficulty in their future if they have $100,000 and they're just together. It's like they just live. And it's so temptation that the easiest path is always the most tempting one. That's true. And I like the fact that Lola on herself, she's not looking for an easy path. She's trying to reconcile with her ex-boyfriend, even though she kind of like dumped him and stuff. And she's trying to figure things out now that she's an orphan. And she has no idea what her future is going to be like. And now I think she's staying in this woman's like apartment, like where she's got like a den mother that's taking care of her to a degree until she finds a man to marry and, you know, be the wife. Right. And it's so strange just to see, like, you know, she's got her place, but she's looking ahead for what her future could be without any idea of what that goal is. She just has ideas and things that she wants to pursue. And then Phyllis, on the other hand, is like, I want my husband dead. I want the stepdaughter out of my life. And I want $100,000 with Walter Neff.
That's right.
And it's like,
by the way, $100,000 back then is about what, $1.3 million now, $1.4 million. That's not a small chunk of change. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like they're saying, like the house that she was living in is like what, $30,000.
Yeah, in Glendale.
In Glendale's this beautiful like Spanish mansion on the hill.
That's where I first lived when I moved out here. I moved to Glendale. I was above Glen Oaks there, and there are some beautiful houses up there. I swear I've driven past a house that looked exactly like that one. But
it's still there, it's still standing.
I'm sure it is. I saw some film footage someone used for rear projection, you know, which is when you're driving, and literally they shot my street in 1947, I think it was. There's some footage of you go right by my house in 1947. It's pretty amazing, and it's amazing how similar the street looks. Just everything's smaller, the trees are smaller and everything, but very little's changed and in all that time, because just the style of the houses and everything, they caught it beautifully in Double Indemnity.
I think that's one of the things I noticed when I first went out to LA, is because I rented like this little place in Century City. And it was like this, it was not a good place to be. But because I was making networking there, I was making friends, and they're all like living in like these various like not really outskirts, but like little suburb pockets throughout around Los Angeles. And one of the things that's kind of funny is I noticed, the houses don't really look like they've been changed or renovated, or like they've been somewhat maintained, but not a whole lot. And I think that has to do with the fact that it's all industry people. They're so busy getting productions made, they don't care so much about.
They don't have time. That's true. Yeah, my house is like 1938. It's that look. A lot of the houses have not changed. They still kept the original facade or the exterior of it. So for me, it's interesting. I always love seeing films set in LA from that period, because you can kind of go, I know that road, or I know that place, or I know where they are. And it's always fun when they actually go on location in particularly in film noir from that period, because you can kind of see what things look like, and they're still somewhat recognizable, which is kind of cool.
And I also think because of the stable weather, like you don't get a lot of thunderstorms, you don't get water damage on the exterior of the homes as frequently as you would everywhere else. So you don't really have to worry about that type of thing. So you could still have. I mean, I think I saw one home. Oh, it must have been in No, can't have been Burbank, but outside of Burbank, where the owner said like it's never been painted since the first time it was built on the outside, and there's only like a little bit of chips here and there from like sun damage and fading, but like there's nothing else wrong with it.
Wow.
I'm like, why? He's like, it doesn't rain. It does, like, you know, what happens out here? It's like it's the same 78 degrees every day.
That's right. Yeah, you could just put the same. Steve Martin does that in a film where he pre-records the weather broadcast like months in advance. It's going to be sunny again today. Yeah, that's
I got
true.
3 options of what it is, and I just play the one as it happens.
That's so true. Well, I want to wrap up this discussion with a couple of interesting little facts about it, but also I encourage everybody to please hit like, please subscribe to the channel. ScriptDoctor and I are going to have more conversations like this. If he's available, we'll try and do this on a little bit more regular basis. Leave some suggestions, some movies that you'd like us to talk about, or if you have any questions about writing or would like to get some writing advice, ScriptDoctor has a great business doing that. I am looking at doing some more films. I have a film out right now called Trouble Is My Business, which is a film noir, and I'm looking to do a slate of films next year as we emerge from all the difficulties we've been having over the last year. It looks like we'll be able to start producing things. So please hit like and subscribe, and do check out, if you can find, Double Indemnity. It's one of our favorite films. You will learn about life, but you'll also, as someone who enjoys film like I do, this is pure cinema. It's amazing. One thing we were talking about, what a great part Walter Neff was. Well, you know, no one wanted to play Walter Neff, the main character. A fact about it is, after the project got through the production code and through a fairly, I would say, laborious screenwriting process, you were saying he and Chandler didn't get along. A big snag was that everybody turned down the leading man, the insurance salesman, Walter Neff. He went to, I'm going to try and remember, I know it was Alan Ladd, George Raft, a few other people, and Raft asked him, well, where's the lapel moment? And the lapel moment would be where Neff, would flip over his lapel and reveal a badge and everything would be okay. And Wilder was like, there's no lapel moment. And so Raft's like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be a bad guy.
Wait, he's actually a sleazeball?
Exactly. And thank you, Brett. Thank you for your comment. I'm glad you enjoyed our chat. But yeah, he didn't want to play a sleazeball. But then Wilder went to Fred MacMurray, who was known for doing lighter, comedies. And MacMurray, I think his reaction was like, well, I do comedy. Why would you want it? And he's like, that's exactly why. And ultimately, even MacMurray said that Neff was one of his greatest roles. And I can't imagine anybody else but him doing it, because he brings that everyman quality, but also the baggage of being the good guy and seeing him corrupted like this. I think also Barbara Stanwyck was scared to play Phyllis Dietrichson. If I'm not mistaken, just as a final kind of fact, is that there was a lot of difficulty at the time. She was really, Barbara Stanwyck may have been the highest paid actress in Hollywood at that time. I'm not sure, 1940s, but she was up there. She was definitely up there. So to play a seductress and murderess, she was a serious actor and had Oscar nominations, and the idea of playing a dark role like that, I think, was intimidating to her. And Wilder, I remember a quote Wilder said to her, well, are you a mouse or an actress?
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, wait a minute. So she took the role, and I think she got did she get a Best Actress nomination? I think she might have, playing that incredible Femme Fatale in that. But it's kind of interesting that both parts were really hard to cast. So it was a lot of movies are made in allowing for happy accidents and also by sheer force of will. I know for a fact, it takes me years to get something made, and it's like waging a small war, moving all the people. I call putting in all the people around the hole and pushing them in the hole at the same time.
Pretty much, yeah.
That is exactly how it is.
So this was actually nominated for 7 Academy Awards, but lost all of them to Billy Wilder's rival, whose name is, I forget at the moment. But
Was it Leo McCarey?
I think
Was
so.
it,
Yeah.
I think he was a rival. Yeah, we did
But
much lighter fare, like Going My Way and those kind of
I think it was
movies.
Going My Way that
Oh,
because it was 44
yeah.
that probably went. Yeah, it was Going My Way, I think. And so it was the New York Film Critics Circle Awards. So Stanwyck and Billy Wilder were nominated for their roles, but they didn't win. I think they only won basically a post-humanist online film and television association award in
Oh,
2007 for the motion picture. But like the
that's
thing is, Double
yeah.
Indemnity is far more talked about than
Far
Going
more
My
talked
Way.
about, than Going My Way. But isn't that true though? I think sometimes the Oscars should be given only 10 years after. Like the Oscars should be about 10 years behind, so that we
The
see,
release date.
yeah, what movie did we end up talking about? I mean, when we have a party, are we watching Shakespeare in Love or are we watching The Matrix? Which one had longer impact? And you look at a film in retrospect, because when it's fresh like that, it's great to say, oh yeah, this is it, or a film where you're like, wow, that one. But then 5 years later, you realize the true impact was this other film.
Yeah.
It was this film that has stood the test of time. Thank you to Troy. I'm glad you enjoyed listening to us talk about this. Script and I love talking about story, and we're hoping to create some new ones ourselves together. We're in business together to make movies. Tree Rock, thank you so much. You're absolutely right. There is no romance in movies anymore, and we hope to bring that back. And KR Nut, I'm glad you had fun. I'm glad everybody stopped in. Script, I want to thank you. Thank you, first off, for your friendship, but second of all, for being so well-spoken about some of the films that I love as well. If you'd like, let's do this again real soon.
Yeah, let's leave a comment on the video of what movie you want us to take a look at next time, and we'll see if we can find it if we don't have it, and discuss it. But
Absolutely.
yeah, this is great because I love talking with you just in general, because it's so hard to find other filmmakers that do love the classics as opposed to a bit more contemporary classics like prior to the 60s.
Yeah, I'm always surprised that most people don't know anything that didn't happen 10 years. The 10 years before. It's like, oh no, that was before I was born. I'm like, and
No, maybe that was the thing that was made that resulted in your conception. Like, you gotta appreciate it.
exactly. And Mozart did pretty well before you were born. So yeah. Where can they find you, Script? Where's the best place to get in touch?
On Twitter at ScriptDoctor PhD. I also have a YouTube channel where I do breakdowns and analysis of film and television shows, which is youtube.com/ScriptDoctor. And you can find some of my stuff here. And if you're new to this channel, which is The Real Deal with Tom Conkle, please hit that like and subscribe, because he's got some cool radio plays, some funny short skits and sketches. You'll really, really like the content here as you peruse it.
Thank you, and you can even find the movie here if you want to watch it. It's on here. So this is it for now. We will look at another film real soon, and thank you for listening. Take care, all.
I think you forgot to end the stream.